Hello, friends, and welcome to We Used to Be Journos, the podcast where two media insiders break down broken news. My name is Jan Fran. I am one of those media insiders, and I am joined, as always, by Antoinette Lattouf. Hello, Antoinette Lattouf.
Hello, Jan Fran. I feel like I need to, right up the top, address something really important because our Ederati have been asking questions, and these questions are about our shirts. It's a no from me and the Ederati shirt.
This is very important stuff. This is the most important thing we could possibly address at the top. Please, go on.
Okay, I'm beginning to understand, now that we are in the process of about to sell these shirts, there have been some complications. I feel the pressure. I feel like now I understand what it's like to be both the media mogul like Rupert Murdoch and an e-commerce mogul like Jeff Bezos, because we've almost finished setting up our shop, but some Ederati got very excited and Googled and found our shirts and somehow started to order them before I really completed the shop setup. And so we got these orders and I'm like, how did people even know?
How did they know?
They Googled. They saw us wearing the shirts at the live show and they Googled Ederati t-shirt. And
Truly? Where did it
took them to a Shopify site that I didn't realize was live yet, which hasn't. Anyway, just so you know, that is being resolved. And our dear subscribers, you'll get first dibs because these are kind of limited merch. It should be ready very soon. And I have had to contact those very eager beavers and say, oh, sorry, I can't give you those shirts just yet. So hang tight. It's been a lot of pressure, Jan. It's a lot of pressure.
The life of a media mogul. I mean, Rupert Murdoch, he's sitting in his office worried about Murdoch merch. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, I feel a bit
have
more...
we got the Shopify up, people?
Yeah, I feel like I'm channeling Jeff Bezos a bit more at the moment. But anyway, I'm getting there, guys. I hope I cleared that up for you. It is coming. Subscribers get first dibs.
Yes, fantastic. Also, if you are in Sydney on the 16th of October, that is a Thursday night, there are still some tickets left to a night of humanity for Palestine at the Enmore Theatre. We are almost sold out. It's going to happen. As you know, there's going to be comedy, there's music, there's poetry, there's In Conversations. We're doing an In Conversation. There's going to be, Tom Ballard's going to be there, Julia Zamiro, Claudia Carvin. It's hosted by Pat Aboard. There's musicians from Gaza, there's Palestinian poets, and of course there's a late addition to the lineup that I'm very excited about. This guy.
Shout out Antoinette Lattouf, my career's in a noose, but I'll take a blacklist over censor in the booth. There's blood on these walls for the lies that are spewed, trying to both sides, what has no right to be skewed. Now tell me, is it conflict? Tell me, is it complex? 50,000 dead, but tell me on in context. It's too late to be vetted as a news, cause the ABC has been burying the truth.
Yeah,
Mudrat did that live on Triple J. Epic.
I mean, this is the most indulgent question you'll ever be asked, and hopefully never be asked again on this show or anywhere else. But how do you feel being featured in art?
It's crazy, right? But I do feel like I think I'm finally cool. Does this make you cool?
Because you're not cool. Because we need to be clear on that.
I've come a long way from being the self-appointed president of the school anti-vandalism club, which nobody wanted, including the teachers.
Were you that?
Yes, I was. It's an organisation I started myself and I appointed myself, and even the teachers were like, Antoinette.
Unnecessary. Uncool.
Yeah, unnecessary, uncool. So when I saw that Mudrat thing, I'm like, young Antoinette was maybe a little bit cool.
And all she had to do was get unlawfully terminated and sue an enormous institution in the federal court.
Yes.
And you too can be cool, kids.
Exactly. There we are. It's very easy.
Anyway, Mudrat's going to be there.
Yeah.
And we're going to put tickets ticket information rather in the show notes. So stay tuned for that. What is in today's show?
As always, we'll begin with our no's because that is our favourite part. My no relates to the deportation of an American Latino journalist who had been live streaming ICE raids on migrant communities, predominantly Latino communities. I'll unpack why that happened, how that happened, and how it's kind of terrifying.
Yes. Yeah, that does sound like a definitive no. My no is the National Press Club pulling the pin on an address by US journo Chris Hedges. He is very outspoken about Israel's actions in Gaza. He was supposed to speak at the press club. The invitation was withdrawn. We do have some information that we will reveal a little later in the show that I think contradicts some things that the press club had said about this issue.
Yep.
But we're going to unpack that. That is Mino, and our big conversation is...
Yes, in the second half of the show, the latest revelations about Israel's desperation to influence young people's views. It is what I like to call genocide glam for Gen Z. Bit of genocide glam.
Truly a dystopian phrase there. We will be looking at the Israeli government's use of influencers across social media to try and counteract the negative perception, increasingly negative perception that Americans and various other people around the world have of Israel 2 years into its genocide against the Palestinian people.
We do have a yes this week. We both have a yes this week.
Correct.
Jen,
I have a yes.
You have a very good yes. What's yours?
Well, I'm not going to tell you what my yes is, but it is a series that is on one of the major networks, a 3-part series about an event, a recent event that happened in Australian politics that I think is really worth dedicating some time to, and I think this series does a really great job of doing that.
And mine is about hyperlocal news and how individuals, even if you're not a journalist, can jump in and fill the gap where there are a lot of news deserts around the country. I'll tell you more about that later, but let's start with It's a No from me. Hello, just a quick note from me. Thank you for watching. As it turns out, those of you who enjoy our content, only 34% of you are subscribers to the Et Media channel. So why don't you just take like 2 seconds, hit subscribe so you get all of our great stuff in your feed. Okay, back to the show. My no is about a US journalist who, he's an American Latino journalist. He's worked in America for 20 years. And firstly, he was arrested in June when he was wearing a press vest. He was live streaming, and he'd become quite known for live streaming ICE's raids on immigrant communities. He has a really large following on Facebook. He's 800,000 people, and he live streams predominantly to the Latino community. He reports in Spanish. His name is Mario Guevara. He's an Emmy-winning Salvadorian journalist, and he's probably one of the most prominent Spanish language reporters in Atlanta. Again, known specifically in recent times for covering ICE's immigration raids and abuses, many that are faced by the Latino community. So while he was live streaming, this is in June, he gets arrested. And so let's take a listen to what happened when he got arrested.
Officer, I'm a member of the media, officer. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I got him. Thank you. Let me finish.
What is happening?
He's getting handcuffed. The live stream is still happening. He's wearing a press vest, and he's just in a suburb in Atlanta, Georgia. And he had been filming an ICE raid, which he had done for a very long time. He then was imprisoned for 100 days, despite a local judge saying, well, he should pay a bond and be released. The argument from the authorities was that he was obstructing their raid. And if you had seen, there was some body cam footage released by the police officers or the authorities, and he was kind of just standing in the middle of the road filming, like he wasn't obstructing. For the layperson, he looked like he was on the road filming. And so not only was his bond refused, then the government decided to investigate the legality of him being in the country. And they reopened a 13-year-old deportation case that had already been closed against him. Like, there was a case about his immigration, but it was found to not be substantial 13 years ago and closed. So they reopened that. He stayed in custody for 100 days. And then it was determined that he had not filled out the correct paperwork when he was applying for his residency. And on that basis, that questioned his legal status in the country. And just a few days ago, he was deported back to El Salvador. He had left El Salvador as a refugee because of his journalism. There was a threat to his life because of what he was uncovering. And so his family were like, is the US government sending him back to be killed by, potentially, because obviously when he left as a refugee, he feared for his life, to be killed by the El Salvadorian.
I actually did not know that that's how that story unfolded, because I followed the Committee to Protect Journalists, and I saw that they had posted about this, that I think they called it like an unprecedented case of retaliation against a reporter or something to that effect. So I was like, oh shit, what the hell is going on? But to hear that it was because of a technicality and that they had looked into a case that had been closed 13 years to try and get him out of the country.
Yes.
He's so messed up.
And this comes as like Trump's pledge to launch the largest mass deportation operation in US history. And thousands of immigrants living in the country country. Yes, there are thousands illegally, but also many legally with valid documentation, including green cards and visas, have
But
been
also,
detained.
like, living there illegally, like, they're working, they're contributing, they have homes, they have families, they're part of the fabric, they're part of the community.
20 years. He worked as a journalist for
That's
20
wild.
years. He had an enormous following. 800,000 people were watching his reports.
That's wild, man. Like, there's open hostility. We've known this for
Yeah.
a while. Like, open hostility under Trump towards the media. I fucking hates the media. He's constantly railing against it. This is definitely an escalation.
Yeah, and
I mean, he's sued news outlets. He's threatened to pull broadcast license. He's like trying to muzzle Pentagon reporters about what they can and can't say. And now, if you're somebody that's in the United States and, you know,
covering stuff that they don't want covered.
Yeah.
Obviously, he would go to kind of like micro rates. Like he was kind of doing that hyperlocal news. He'd be there live streaming when major news outlets were not. And that's how he got a lot of his viewers, because people were like, oh my God, these are happening everywhere. He's there. He's showing exactly what happened. So that if ISIL authorities suggest X, Y, or Z, he could have evidence to the contrary. Obviously, they don't like that. Why it matters.
Is it like that is the type of shit that you would hear in like
North Korea.
despotic country, exactly.
Yep. So more than 100 journos and scholars at the time of his detention, because remember, he was detained for 100 days before he was deported. They've condemned this as an attack on press freedom, saying that the only thing Guevara endangered was the government's grip on information that it wants hidden. So yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
Dare I say, won't be the last.
No.
Fucking.
But also, when I thought 100, like only 100 in a country the size of the United States, given how many journos they have.
Yeah, look, if anyone has experiences of the industry of journalists and scholars not really saying much in
and not
defense of
sticking up
other
for you.
journalists, I'm not hugely surprised.
Yeah.
All right. So,
that
0
is-
stars. That's your no.
Definitely 0 stars.
Yeah. My no from me this week comes to us courtesy of the National Press Club and its cancelling of a talk by American journalist Chris Hedges. So just a little bit of background. The National Press Club is like an ideas forum, I guess you can say. They bring speakers out. The audience is, the folks of Canberra, lots of journalists, lots of policy people, stakeholders, to use that word. And Chris Hedges was due to speak on the 20th of October.
If you've maybe heard of the National Press Club, it's because the ABC also broadcasts some of its addresses, not all of it. And so you can watch the full address on ABC 24 from time to time, depending on their schedule.
Yeah.
A little bit about who Chris Hedges is. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning journo. He's worked at the New York Times for 15 years. He was a foreign correspondent and bureau chief in the Middle East and the Balkans. He's an author. He now co-hosts the Chris Hedges Report. He's got 180,000 subscribers on Substack. He was due in particular to speak about how the Western media has failed to truthfully report on the Gaza genocide. That's what his press club address was about.
Yep.
And to speak about our slain and murdered colleagues in Gaza.
His focus was on journalism.
Journalism,
basically.
yes.
However, on Friday, he wrote a piece on his Substack saying that the National Press Club had caved to the pro-Israel lobby and cancelled his talk. He said that the announcement of his talk had disappeared from the website of the National Press Club, and he said that reportedly the Israeli ambassador was being considered to speak instead.
Yes.
Right? We have to be very clear. The National Press Club released a statement on Sunday, a day or so later,
Yes.
saying that the club had tentatively agreed to a date with Mr. Hedges and that it's constantly reviewing its schedule, and when the details of the address were made available, they decided to pursue other speakers, right? They also they said that there was a bunch of factual inaccuracies in what he had said.
I did read the press release because I had originally retweeted Chris Hedges' article when it came out, quoting Chris Hedges and his allegations. Also in that press release that NPC put out, they denied it had caved to any outside pressure, denied that his proposed address was ever published on its website, and denied his talk was being cancelled to make way for the Israeli ambassador. So I was like, oh, this is like something doesn't stack up. There's a lot of he said, she said, and it doesn't sound, what's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot of he said, she said. We've got the emails between the National Press Club and Chris Hedges' team, and that is the Australian Friends of Palestine Association. it is a little bit more than tentatively agreed to a date with Chris Hedges. So an email dated September 8 includes a confirmation letter signed by the CEO of the press club where the subject line is confirmation National Press Club address, right? In that email, the CEO asks for a headshot, they ask for a bio, they ask for the theme of the talk. So it's pretty progressed in where they're at. Like they've locked the man in as per the email. So I'm not really buying like this tentatively booked in a date. We reached out to the National Press Club. To their credit, they did get back to us. The CEO said that the address was confirmed, but subject to further details being provided. That was not made clear in any of the emails that I saw, basically.
Well, the subject line of the email was confirmation. And, and that goes against what was said in the press release.
Indeed it does. So I think like, you know, you confirmed with the man and then you withdrew that confirmation.
Just as a little aside, I know that the National Press Club had been in talks with Chris Hedges for a few months because I'm doing an event in Sydney with Chris Hedges, and my event our event together with Randa Abdul Fattah kept having to get moved because like, oh no, National Press Club, we're waiting to get back. Oh, we've got the confirmation. Now he's going to be in Canberra on this date. So can we move your event in Sydney to this other date? So perhaps
he got dicked around. There's no two ways of looking at it.
But also he got confirmed because our event in Sydney had to get moved so that he could make the Canberra event.
Right.
So it's probably also why I was quick to believe when Chris Hedges put out his statement, also obviously because he's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist with an excellent reputation, that this indeed had happened.
Right. Okay. Well, to be clear, again, the press club is like vehemently adamant that they did not capitulate to any outside pressure and that the decision was made. And this is what they've said in the emails to Hedges' team. They said, we had a review of our speaker program. We're receiving an excess of proposals in favour for the Palestinian cause, which is understandable in the current environment. I have decided that in the interest of balancing out our program, we will withdraw our offer and respectively decline your proposal.
Okay.
That's what Chris Hedges was told. Even if you were to take the press club at its word that there was no outside influence at all, that they didn't capitulate, that the Israeli ambassador is not speaking, which they vehemently denied that he is, like, this reads as bad to me. The idea that, like, a couple of things about this don't sit right with me.
Balance out the program?
Oh my God, balance out the program. That's number one. But we'll come to that in a second. We are receiving an excess of proposals in favour for the Palestine cause. He then goes on to name a few.
Yes, Chris Sidoti and Ben Saul, who were just on. By the way, a lot of the Edirati did listen to that and try to suggest that as a yes for you, saying that was an excellent address. It was really important. It was great. And they watched it. So, yeah, I mean, they're excellent people. Are they for the Palestinian cause or are they evidence-based scholars of human rights, international law and genocide?
Like, see, this is what I had like a little bit of a question mark around, because he names those folks and then he also says, you know, Judge Navi Pillay is speaking, James Elder from UNICEF is speaking, and they're cited as examples of people speaking in favour for the Palestinian cause. And I'm like, hang on a second, Navi Pillay is a judge. She doesn't speak on any cause. That's not what she does.
She speaks on the weight of evidence.
She speaks on the weight of evidence. James Elder is from UNICEF.
Yeah.
He's not speaking for the Palestinian cause. Like, these are not examples of that. An example of someone speaking for the Palestinian cause would be a Palestinian who's talking about Palestinian liberation from occupation.
Yeah.
Sure. If you called that the Palestinian cause, I'd say, yeah, I guess that is speaking for the Palestinian cause, which I don't think they've ever had, by the way.
I haven't seen any Palestinians in the past couple of years. We did have the Israeli ambassador in late 2023. Haven't seen any Palestinians address the National Press Club. Also haven't seen any journalists speaking specifically to journalism at the National Press Club. One would think, balancing out a program about national press issues, you may want to decide on somebody who speaks about press issues more specifically. So let's accept that they weren't influenced by external pressures. This makes me, in some ways, more alarmed because it's the kind of self-censoring and false balancing that people begin to do within organisations, as we know they do in newsrooms, because they foresee an attack. They start to temper their language, temper their programs, change things in anticipation of these attacks, which is in some ways just worse because that means silencing and lobbying is working without even having to exert overt pressure. It works anyway.
It's the best kind of lobbying. Just do nothing. Just like people will internalize it.
Just breathe deeply and scare people.
I think we need to be clear. It's like, we don't know I don't know what happened with the National Press Club, right? Like, I can only go off the evidence that we have in terms of what they have said to Chris Hedges' team and what he said back, right? I just know from experience, as you say in newsrooms, that this idea of balancing out the program is something that ends up actually skewing the truth. And I'll give you an example. I worked in a newsroom, this was some years ago, well before October 7, right? But it was still about Israel, Gaza. I think there was an incursion into Gaza at the time, and we were looking to cover it. And I think we had a...
I hate the word incursion. It sounds like a fun excursion with children.
There was just like, fucked bombing in Gaza.
Yeah.
I can't remember the death toll. It was high.
Yeah.
We're looking to cover it. And I think we had a Palestinian person who was ready to talk, and we did not have an Israeli person, which already there's like issues with that, I understand. But we're trying to get like, if you got a Palestinian voice, you get an Israeli voice. The other option was to have someone from a humanitarian organization, right? Who's not Palestinian, who's not Israeli, who's someone that works for this organization that can give us an overview of what is happening on the ground. I pitched several humanitarian organizations that had people on the ground at the time. And there was people in the newsroom who were like, they're just going to come down on the side of the Palestinians. So we need to get an Israeli. We need to get an Israeli voice. And I was like, hey, hang on a second. They will say what they need to say. Like, we're going to them.
Based on their expertise.
Correct. About what the situation on the ground is. What they say is what they say, right? Like, it's not coming down on any side. It's telling you the truth of what is happening. Like, either you believe that these organizations are objective organizations that are here to tell you the truth, or you don't. And if you're putting an Israeli voice to quote unquote balance out the program or whatever it is, then actually what you're doing is just skewing the truth.
Yeah.
So I've seen this happen time and time and time again.
The other thing that was sort of the he said, she said didn't add up, and there was some screen grabs doing the rounds on social media, was beyond confirmation whether it had gone up on the website, because Chris Hedges had alleged in that article that they've taken my talk down from the website. We saw this screen grab with Chris Hedges' headshot, again, which we saw in the email exchange. They asked for a headshot. You don't ask for a headshot if you're not sure about it. We've done many speaking events. It's like, event confirmed, send us a headshot. We're going to put it up on your website. It's just the next step. And the price of the ticket, which is $95. And so you went to the National Press Club and said, well, if this wasn't taken down from your website, please explain this picture and number. And it's dated September the 8th, which is
when they sent the confirmation email to Chris Hedges' team. Yes, they have no answer for this. They don't know what it is. They say it's weird and that they never posted about Chris Hedges on that date. That's the best that they can offer. I did not see it on their website personally because there's nothing there when you go there.
Yes.
So that's just like another
he said, she
something
said.
that just doesn't quite add up.
Yeah. Look, the truth is we haven't spoken to Chris Hedges specifically as to why he alleged there was pressure or why he was so explicit and specific about who would be replacing him, where he suggests the Israeli ambassador. And I understand why it was easy to believe that there was outside pressure, because obviously in my case, in so many cases, in writers' festivals, at universities, there's been outside pressure again and again and evidence of it. So I think the public were quick to go, yep, we understand that that's what happened. But in some ways, I would argue that even if there was an outside pressure and this was an internal decision, in some ways it's worse because you're using this sense of balance, balancing out the program, and I would argue preempting criticism and attacks from said lobby groups. And I mean, that's how self-censoring works.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that they were probably just like, I don't know, there's just too much Palestinian stuff.
But also not acknowledging, but no Palestinians and no one specifically speaking about journalism.
Yeah.
Still too much Palestinian stuff.
Yeah, in the middle of a genocide.
Yeah.
Like, forgive me, but wouldn't this be the time to have
Lots.
Yeah, heaps, I would say.
Yeah.
Now. Because if you don't have an emphasis on Palestinian stuff or Palestinian voices now, like, when are you going to do it?
Yeah.
We're 2 years into a genocide. When are you going to do it? You're never going to do it. You're never going to do it. So, like, that's the point. And, like, I spoke to a bunch of people, and my question is, like, why did it have to be one or the other? Like, why couldn't Chris Hedges have still spoken at the National Press Club?
Because of this belief that a judge, someone who works for the UN, that these people are for the Palestinian cause rather than for international law, human rights.
Yeah.
So that is like my heart hurts no. I know that was your no, but that's how I feel about this no. I feel a bit sad about it.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. For our subscribers, we will be breaking a lot of this down in our newsletter. You'll get to see some of the questions that we put to the National Press Club, their response as well. We'll make sure that we put that up there, and just a little bit of a timeline as to how this all happened and what we know. So if you want to get all of that, do go to antmedia.com and hit that subscribe button. Okie doke, we're going to have a chat now about Israel ramping up its Hasbara on social media by hiring influencers to help it distract from the fact that it is committing genocide in Gaza. And
You said that with a smile.
I did, because as I was saying these words, I realized that I think this is the most dystopian sentence that has ever come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Are we in a simulation? Where are we? Is this?
It feels like it's not real. I wish it wasn't real. I wish we could get off this ride, but no, we cannot. But look, the truth is we want this to be constructive. Like, we could pretty much finish so many of these segments with, this is just so fucked. It's all fucked. It is. But I guess we want to look at Israel's latest iteration of trying to control the narrative and how it's using influencers to do this. Because we know that is where a growing number of people get their news, in particular Jen said. And we want to unpack how it's happening, I guess how to spot it, and also what kind of impact can it really have.
Yeah. And some of the context around it, because it is all kind of unfolding in a wider context that people might not, entirely be across. And before we get to all of that, I think it's important just to set out, I guess, the vibe.
Yeah.
Is that a decent way of describing it?
Yeah, the vibe.
Yeah, the vibe. Basically, public opinion's turning against Israel. We've known that for some time. There's poll after poll that shows this from, countries around the world. But importantly, it's turning against Israel in the United States. And that matters because the United States, as we know, funds Israel to commit its genocide. And so if the people of the United States are like, I don't know about this, well then, maybe Israel has a little bit of a problem. So just to give you an overview, this one particular poll, which was released on Friday, showed that 65% of, this is Democratic responders, so Democrats, favor sanctions on Israel.
Yeah.
A poll that was conducted by the New York Times showed that a majority of American voters, not just Democrats, majority of American voters now oppose sending aid to Israel, be that military or humanitarian. About 6 out of 10 voters said that Israel should end its military campaign.
Yeah, and those numbers tend to get higher the younger the age group. So Jen said in particular, against the political spectrum, the opinion in the United States is hardening against Israel.
Yeah, and if you're watching all of this go down from Israel, if you're, say, the Prime Minister, you're thinking, we gotta do something here. And what is the answer?
War crime Hasbara with a Snapchat filter. And this is not just speculation from us. This is Benjamin Netanyahu in New York at the end of September with a bunch of influencers.
We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance. To that community, they're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. The weapons change over time.
And now the weapons are on social media. And so he says, ask our influencers, because he was addressing
because they are our weapons.
They are our weapons. So this isn't a secret, but the latest investigation, which has raised a few eyebrows, albeit not here in Australia, which we'll get to in just a moment. Responsible Statecraft is an online magazine in the US. It's part of the Quincy Institute. To be fair, I'd never heard of it, so I was like, is this bogus? Who's the Quincy Institute?
No, it is a US think tank that
yes, I had to have
in foreign policy.
Yes, I had to have a look. They've been around since 2019. They not only specialize in foreign policy, but they're generally against the US getting involved in a bunch of foreign wars. That's their starting point, so you'd understand why they might do a deep dive into this. What they have revealed is that the Israeli government has budgeted $900,000 US to be spent from mid-June this year to the end of November to pay social media influencers to promote pro-Israel content and to pay specifically American social media influencers. So the plan is to...
And young
ones, to recruit 14 to 18 influencers to post 25 to 30 pro-Israel pieces per month on platforms, on a range of platforms, targeting mostly Gen Z audiences. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the detail, but they traced the money trail. It wasn't as clear as like, here is a bank transfer from the IDF to said influencer.
Sure.
It goes from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to this media group, to this German company, to a Washington-based firm that manages the influencers. But they have managed to track the money trail, and get their hands on this plan.
Okay. So, I mean, the pro-Israel influencing has been happening for months, if not years, really. I mean, you know, I remember like the likes of Noah Tishby very early on, October 2023, doing videos with various celebrities and people about, you know, how wonderful Israel is and how everybody's got it wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And she's not the only one, by the way. There's a whole bunch of...
Yeah, and I remember Haaretz wrote this excellent article called The Real Housewives of Hasbara, and they talked about Noah Tishby as well as a bunch of others who blend lifestyle content with Zionist activism and like use like the get ready with me. It's just like, let's put a bit of lip gloss on while they spout, you know, propaganda.
They've been around for some time, though. Recently, something shifted. Something's become a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more coordinated.
A bit more overt.
A little bit more overt. I mean, you know, i.e. the meeting in New York with the influencers in September. Before that, in August, Israeli and US influencers were taken to a distribution site in Gaza that was run by...
I say distribution site.
That's
because
fair.
It's where
Quote,
also
unquote.
children get killed, where they go and try and collect some food. Palestinian children. Go on.
Yeah, I think the humanitarian organisations have call it a massive hunt of people.
Exactly.
From memory. Distribution site, a space to conduct a massive hunt of people, you know. That's right. The United Nations says 1,400 people at least have been killed at distribution sites seeking aid. Anyway, that's where these influencers were taken so that they could see all of these shipments containing food.
They were sent here, these influencers, at a time when all of a sudden the world had accepted. Remember, we spoke about it a few months ago on the podcast. All of a sudden it was like, yes, we accept starvation and emaciated children are bad. Yeah, and it was at this time where even front pages of American newspapers had emaciated children. And so this was clearly an effort to try and counter that. And honestly, the content ranged from kind of like the subdued liar regurgitating talking points almost in a journalistic way to try and sound kind of like rational in a journalistic way, but for a fee, to others who had clear genocide enthusiasm and were sprouting this stuff to hundreds of thousands of their followers. I know your mouth just dropped, but just take a listen when I say genocide enthusiasm.
Okay.
If I were Israel, I wouldn't even provide matching socks to Gaza. But here's all the aid that y'all claim doesn't exist. Now walk with me. I'm here in Gaza, and all I see is food, water, and opportunity. But instead of Hamas distributing the ramen noodles, they're eating it all, and that's why their leaders are on Ozempic. The United Nations brings the food here to look like they're actually doing something productive, but they never finish the job, just like your ex.
Yes.
They never finished the job, just like your ex.
Walk with me, ramen noodles, Ozempic. So essentially they took these influencers where they were like shelves and shelves and shelves of aid, and like, look, it is all here, and it's just Hamas that's not distributing it. It's not Israel. But then I think this one is my favorite. Also, this guy has hundreds of thousands of followers, and this particular video is pinned to his page.
And now we're seeing it as they use food as a weapon of war. Truly one of the most pathetic, disgusting acts that I have witnessed in my entire life, and that's why I had to come to Gaza. I got my bulletproof vest on. I don't care. I will do anything to share with you the truth.
Very noble. Yeah, and is this the truth that humanitarian organizations have been shouting from the rooftops? I mean, really, since late 2023.
So all of that, I watched it at first. I was like, yeah, bro, that makes a lot of sense.
Who are you talking about?
He's talking about Hamas is doing this, not his beloved Israel, who is presumably through a third-party agency paying for him to be at that border crossing and to be at that aid, inverted commas, distribution site.
Yeah. How much is that content worth? Like, how much is it? Is there a dollar figure on how much one is willing to accept to I don't know, whitewash a genocide.
We don't know how much these particular influencers were paid, but based on the investigation that was just done by Responsible Statescraft, they kind of did the maths of the 900,000 that was allotted based on how many posts they wanted and how many influencers they were recruiting. And they said it was about 7,000 US per post, which is about 10,000 Australian. So if it's one post a week, you're making 40 US a month.
You're doing pretty
like
well.
40-second videos of absolute nonsense. And, you know, if you want to be cool and zeitgeisty, refer to like things like Ozempic and ramen noodles.
That's fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
Is this even legal?
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. I mean, there are questions about whether this is, in terms of the US, a breach of like foreign government influence.
Yeah, because
laws,
it is a foreign government paying US citizens to influence US opinion. Like, forgive me, if Russia was doing that, it definitely would not be legal.
Yeah,
I'm just going to speculate.
Yeah, absolutely. But more specifically to social media outlets themselves. Like, do you remember when Instagram came out and they're like, anytime there is a collab or an ad, you have to do like hashtag ad, hashtag paid trip, paid sponsorship, paid collab declaration.
Are they collabing with like the at IDF? Are they collabing with like at State of Israel?
No, they are not. And there's also, for many of them, pinned on their pages. So it wasn't hard for me to go and find it, despite the fact that it was in August last year. But yes, I cannot see any evidence of Instagram also shutting these accounts down, because they're still there, they're still pinned. But we also know that, like, we're pretty sure we've been shadow banned. We can tell when our engagement drops. We know that when we speak about Gaza or the genocide or use those words, we don't have the evidence, we just suspect.
Yeah.
But there is evidence.
We've been on these platforms long enough, making content long enough to know when things are behaving a little bit weirdly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we also know of plenty of journos or commentators who are critical of Israel who have just had their accounts suspended.
It's such a wild space. Like, we are on YouTube, okay? And we are trying to monetize our videos on YouTube. Okay. I will tell you that right now.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you have to like fill in all of this information and whatever. Every time I get to that page, there is this there's like a little pop-up that comes up every time, and it says, due to the war in Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war. So clearly YouTube has made, a moral calculation that actually you can't make money off videos that dismiss or exploit or condone the war in Ukraine. No such pop-up for Gaza. In fact, I don't know, are these videos being monetized? Old mate fucking ramen noodles, that's his pinned video.
Yeah.
It's still up there, baby. It's the one that he clearly wants most people to see.
Yeah.
So it's like this double standard is just, it's a head fuck.
Yeah. Look, and we can agree that it's fucked, it's morally dubious, if not completely morally empty, like gross, whatever. We can call it all the things we want to call it. But I think the important thing is to note like what it's trying to counteract, particularly on social media. Because for months and months, we saw videos of IDF soldiers boasting proudly about evidence of their war crimes or their depravity.
Oh my God. If you thought ramen noodles was bad.
Yeah, and so I've seen myself like selfies laughing as they blow up buildings, videos of Palestinians stripped, bound and blindfolded that were filmed and uploaded online by these soldiers, and also those videos of soldiers toying with like women's lingerie that they found in homes in Gaza.
Yeah.
So they're trying to counteract. I mean, many of us have seen it. Many of us have been disgusted. So, I guess the question is, will having these influencers change anything? Will it change anything?
Yeah. Well, will it have its intended impact, which is to change US sentiment around Israel and presumably sentiment around the world? Like, the borders don't just stop at the United States on social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because first when I saw that, I was like, honestly, ain't no chance people are buying this. But you and I are not the audience. Presumably our listeners are not the audience. They're more discerning. They formed their own opinions. But that's not everybody.
No. I mean, there was a poll out again recently. This is an Australian poll conducted by YouGov, I believe on behalf of APAN, that showed that 58% believe that starvation is being used as a tool of war. 58% of respondents in the Australian population. So that's a pretty sizable. That's 60%. 19%, however, either disagreed or strongly disagreed that was happening. And interestingly, 24% said that they don't know.
Yes.
So you have like somewhere in the order of 45% that either disagree that starvation's being used or simply don't know. And I think it's that cohort in the middle that, you know, they might watch like fucking ramen noodles and go, actually, I didn't know before, but now I do know, and there's no starvation because look, there's all these ramen
pallets.
noodles.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to give too much credit, though, to the influencers because, like, standing on its own, Israel would collapse under the weight of its falsehoods. Like, the statements that come out of Netanyahu's mouth, borderline absurd. What is more distressing for you and I that we have discussed, it's the large swaths of the media that do the heavy lifting and legitimize or defer to Netanyahu enough that it begins to give this absurdity legitimacy.
Or begin articles with Israel says, Israel says, Israel says, Israel says.
Yes. So
you always come back to this point, don't you?
This is your point. This is my point.
It's like,
because
it's the mainstream media.
It is.
They're doing this. They're providing the space for this to happen. Yeah.
They are. Yeah. They are. Or, and to go back to my favourite point, I couldn't find a single Australian news outlet reporting on this latest influencer deal, this investigation, or even those who'd been paid to sprout the propaganda earlier this year in August. And I was able to find all of those videos. They all went at the same time. They all said variations of the same thing. And I looked, SBS, ABC, The Guardian. I actively searched and I could not find any articles investigating or just talking about influencers and the relationship with Israel. But then at the same time, even Jerusalem Post and the Times of Israel, which are overtly Zionist, have reported on this with a grain of skepticism about the influencers.
Right.
So when the mouthpieces for the Israeli government are even looking into it, and none of our media outlets are here in Australia, you could say, oh, you know, but this is US influencers, this is not. But come on, they cover so much of Israel, and particularly it's because it's social media, it's Gen Z, it's influencers. There's something in there for local press. So that goes that goes back to my favorite point, my talking point, which is we need
the mainstream media's dropped the ball.
Yes.
I mean, also the context here is very, very important. So like on this question of like, will it work? I think what we need to think about is what we're not seeing. First of all, journalists are not allowed into Gaza. Foreign journalists, again, I'm doing air quotes because
Independently.
Palestinian journalists have been reporting on the ground since day one. But, you know, journalists belonging to media outlets in Australia and the United States, everywhere, are not allowed into Gaza. So imagine...
Unless they're escorted on a little tour.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to use your imagination here, I'm sad to say. Just imagine what you are not seeing.
Yeah.
If this is all of the stuff that you are seeing, imagine what you are not seeing. And this is kind of set amid a backdrop of really not hearing very much about Gaza in the mainstream press. And you might hear a story here and there, nothing that mirrors the reality, which is daily bombings, daily killings. I mean, the genocide is escalating. We know this. There was a massive ground incursion. I've barely seen any reporting.
I'm going to ban you from using the word incursion.
There was a massive, you're right. You're right. I haven't seen any reporting of this really. So again, that's something that you're not getting. And the other thing that we're not seeing are the massive protests
in Europe,
around the world. 2 million people in Italy on Friday. Did you know about that?
You only when you told me.
I told you about it.
Yes.
I have not seen it. I saw it on the internet. And then, you know, when you see things on the internet, you're like, when is this from? This cannot be from, is this from now?
Yeah.
And so you have to do like an independent search. And no, it's from now. Just on Friday. Saw it in Associated Press. 2 million Italians doing a national strike for Gaza. That's to say nothing of the Spaniards and of the Dutch that have taken to the streets. Massive, massive protest. So you're not getting any of this.
Yes.
That's the context within which these Israeli, pro-Israel influencers are entering.
And the TikTok sale as well, because you may not have seen it if the TikTok sale goes ahead, because you often get, unfettered videos or citizen journalism or whatever you want to call it because of platforms like TikTok.
And if you don't know about the TikTok sale, let me give you the too long didn't read version.
Yeah.
It's being sold from Chinese owners to a bunch of billionaires that are very pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Including Larry Ellison, who I believe is the single largest donor to the IDF maybe ever. And also a gentleman called Rupert Murdoch. Have you
Yeah.
heard of him?
Yeah.
And so that's happening, and that'll definitely impact the algorithm.
And they're not even being like covert about it. In that same meeting with the influencers in New York, Netanyahu went on to talk about TikTok is going to be very important for us.
Oh, he's
like
very,
these are not secrets. These are not secrets.
No, he's very happy that the sale is going through. I tell you what, anytime Benjamin Netanyahu is happy about anything, it's bad.
Terrible.
Yeah, I think just have that as your North Star, right? So yes, that's happening. I don't know how much that's going to impact Australia. I know we posted about this on our Instagram. There were a bunch of people in the comments, rightly so, saying, are we going to be impacted? I thought this was just for the US. The fact is, like, there's no transparency around exactly how this will work.
But any time of when that trifecta of gross billionaire Zionists are involved in a purchase, it cannot be good. The trickle-down effect cannot be good.
Yeah. I mean, there were lawmakers had been saying well before the purchase that there was like pro-Palestinian, too much pro-Palestinian content on TikTok, and they needed to balance out the program, frankly.
Which sounds a lot like the National Press Club.
That's not technically a direct quote, but it
Yes.
may as well be. You know what I mean? All of this balancing out.
Which takes me back to, yes, these influencers are gross. Yes, propagandists are always going to update their propaganda channels, and that where it's incumbent on journalists to do their job.
Right. And we've gone back to the mainstream media has dropped the ball. We've gone back. We've come back. I want to bring up a particular one point. And like you said, our listeners are probably people who are very in tune with the world and they're interested in what's going on around them and they're internet savvy and all of this sort of stuff. And they would think that if they saw some dickhead in a warehouse talking about ramen noodles and Ozempic in the middle of a fucking genocide, like they would be rightly disgusted.
Yeah.
That's not going to work on them. It might work on the people in between. It might not work on them. An interesting thing that I came across, right, was in May. There was a letter that was written to the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. It was written by someone who called himself a surrogate of Israel in the United States. And the purpose of this letter was to tell the Prime Minister of Israel that their media strategy is very bad. It's not working. They're losing hearts and minds. They have to reconfigure. And the letter laid out, I believe it was like a 7-point plan for all of the things that the Israeli government can do to particularly win back young people in America. There were things like make more original content, talk more firmly about the threat that Iran poses. There was even a pitch for an entire social media PR campaign called Dude, You Got Us Wrong, where you interview Israelis from all walks of life.
Oh, dude, that's going to get Jen said. Dude,
you got us wrong.
Yeah, nice.
But it was like this very sort of, well-outlined pitch on what to do. That letter was written by Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
Unsurprisingly, at least I wasn't surprised. It's worth reading just to give you an idea of how folks like Charlie Kirk, who is an evangelist, a Christian,
was
a Christian Zionist, a very strong supporter of Israel at some point, certainly, just to give you an idea of how they're thinking and what they think is going to win the people over, right? One of the most telling bits of this letter actually came in the first paragraph. One of the opening lines, really, where he says to the Prime Minister, as Mohammedism spreads into Western societies, it is critical that Jews and Christians stay united in the effort to contain and roll back radical Islam and Sharia law. And that, to me,
what the hell is Mohammedism?
Many questions.
Yeah.
We all know what this is. This is Islam is a threat to us all.
Yeah.
And that is the Hasbara point. That is the pressure point that they are going to press time and time and time again.
Because you never hear like radical Judaism or radical Christianity. Like, is radical Judaism behind murdering children while they sleep?
Like, certainly radical Islam sounds a lot more familiar to
Right?
Western ears.
Yes, even though you don't understand what it means. Just like I wouldn't understand what radical Judaism means. But if it's said enough and used enough for long enough, you kind of accept it without it meaning anything.
Yeah. And so on that question of like, will this work? Will people actually be fooled by this? You might not be fooled by old mate ramen noodles, but if you have enough pressure points talking about radical Islam, which is something that we have been fed for decades.
Yep. It's 30 years in the making.
It's 30 years in the making. There is fertile ground there. And the average Australian is already suspicious of Islam and Sharia law. It doesn't take much to sway them, actually.
Again, I think most people would have no idea what Sharia law means.
No, I couldn't.
Just
fucking
pull
tell
it,
you.
something Pauline Hanson. Sharia law.
Yeah, it's bad.
Pauline Hanson says.
That's what people would have in their heads. Like Sharia law, who knows? Radical Islam, who knows? But we know that it's terrible.
Yeah.
And so I guess that I would just I'd watch for that, and there will be moments where this discussion is, brought into the national spotlight, because you will get incidents where, I don't know, Syrian people of Syrian descent in Manchester fucking commit anti-Semitic acts.
Yeah.
Like horrible, heinous fucking crimes.
Yeah.
And then you start to hear how the conversation then turns to be about Islam, and are we letting Sharia law? Are we letting these Muslims in? And this is our society.
And we know that this sort of treatment isn't given when the person is born and bred, who is a white person or who is a person of a different faith. But yes,
nobody's asking questions about how many Christians there are in the community if a Christian man commits a crime, which, believe it, some have.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that is that's my one thing that I would tell people to watch out for, the rhetoric around Islam, because I think that that's a particular pressure point of Hasbara. And so did Charlie Kirk, apparently.
I guess that's a good point. Even if you do think that you follow the weight of the evidence and are very sympathetic to Palestinians, or cannot stomach the human rights atrocities we are seeing, I think we have to remind ourselves that for a much longer time, as we say, about 30 years, this rhetoric, this demonizing Muslims, this hysteria around people from the Middle East, that has been making its way into all of our hearts and minds, whether we like it or not. And I think we have to constantly challenge it. I think that's probably the takeaway from this.
Yeah.
That it's a lot more insidious and far less overt than these crazy influences.
Hello, thank you for watching. Thank you for making it this far. I hope you have enjoyed what you have liked and what you have heard. If you have, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. It really, really helps our show, and we would be very grateful. All right, back to the show. Okay.
It is a yes from me.
It's a yes.
Jan, we're going to start with you.
Yes. Okay, great. I do have a yes this week. And my yes this week is The People versus Robodebt, which is a 3-part series currently streaming on SBS On Demand, that goes into the Robodebt. I don't even want to call it a fiasco, because it was so much worse than that.
Scandal, disgrace.
Disgrace.
Yeah.
Which, for those who don't know, that was when under the Morrison government anyway, a kind of automated Centrelink system went after people that it said owed massive debts to Centrelink, which they did not owe. And of course, that distressed so many people, some to the point where they took their own lives. It was fucking fucked.
Disgusting.
Like, forgive me, I'm sure there's a more elegant way of saying that.
Oh, that's appropriate.
That is appropriate. I feel like it really is appropriate. Anyway, SBS has commissioned this documentary 3-part series on Robodebt and on how it all went down. And it's I've watched the first episode. I'm going to watch the rest. So far, so good. Very well put together. There are some reenactments of, people that the story is about. So there's actors playing them, which at first I found a little bit weird, but I don't know, it sort of grew on me by the end.
Okay.
Which was just a technique that I've not really seen very much in documentary, because this is a kind of factual documentary. But what I found particularly interesting is kind of the inadvertent media literacy that this series provides. And I don't know if they necessarily set out to provide media literacy, but it is so revealing the way in which this story was spun to the public via Morrison government stooges, I don't know, spin doctors.
Yeah.
There was one person that was featured in the documentary is a woman called Rochelle Miller, who used to work for Alan Tudge, who blew the whistle on a number of things that were happening in that government at the time. But now she's here talking quite candidly about some of the techniques that they used to get into the media that they were just going after welfare cheats. And frame these people who had done nothing wrong, who were among the most vulnerable people in society, as being people that owed debts to taxpayers and were rorting the system.
There's nothing tabloid media likes than a so-called welfare cheat. And there's nothing audiences love to hate more, because they like to think that we're the hard-working good guys that pay our taxes, and these are the tax cheats.
Exactly. And there was this bit in the documentary where, you know, she said that there were friendly media outlets that were fed this narrative that just lapped it up because, as you said, stories about doll bludgers really get under the skin of audiences. And it was confected in an office in Canberra. The line was, anyway.
By people who were being paid by the taxpayer dollar, by the way.
Exactly. To shit on people who were so fucking terrified about vulnerable about having to like repay this debt. So anyway, that for me was a very enlightening kind of view of the way in which politics and the media work in tandem for sometimes the worst possible outcomes.
I love how your yes for me is also incredibly depressing. I'm like, it is a yes from me, but it is also like I'm also
but within that yes, there is a no.
there's a resounding no. But I think that's a.
It's not depressing though. It's actually a very I found it a very enlightening watch.
Okay.
And I was the feeling is furious more so than depressed. Like, sorry, is anyone going to jail for this? That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Like, are we? Is anyone like? Does anyone get fined? Is anyone going to be held accountable, or is just like, oh, this is something that happened that the government kind of?
But it was a bit bad.
Yeah, it was a bit bad. Oh, but
yeah,
it's over now, and we do documentaries about it, and so.
And now Scott Morrison has written a book about his spirituality and forgiveness, so he's presumably forgiven himself.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Anyway, you can stream The People vs. Robodebt on SBS On Demand.
Okay, so my yes from me is actually a bit of constructive. It's a bit of constructive journalism, but a toolkit on how to be part of the solution. So this was recommended by an Etirati member, Denise. So Denise, thank you very much. The local Independent News Association, it's an independent body supporting 170 independently owned, community-focused newsrooms across Australia. So essentially, they are there to fill news deserts, which is geographic areas that have pretty much no local news provisions. So Lena has, that's the acronym, has a newsroom starter kit for anyone thinking of starting a hyperlocal news outlet in their own community. And it released this starter kit a couple of months ago. And I had a look at it. And it's really quite comprehensive. You know, it's various chapters, 10 chapters, like why start a newsroom, identifying who your audience is, do the business plan, the business model, how to fund it, various ways, philanthropy, subscriptions, local ads, content, tech, all the stuff, learning and development, launching, growth. And there are a couple of examples that have followed this pattern that they highlight. And one such publication is Victoria's Prom Coast News. So that was started just under a year ago by passionate local volunteers. And they wanted to fill the news desert left after the region's 140-year-old local paper shut down. And then there was going to be a local election coming up, and there was going to be no coverage of the candidates, no coverage of the issues. So a small team started it, and it's still there a year ago. But even one that's
a year later.
A year later. One that's even more hyperlocal.
What does hyperlocal mean? Like,
Okay.
What's the circulation?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this, how the circulation of this next example I want to give, but it's actually just a suburb in Sydney.
Okay.
And this is called In the Cove. It's Lane Cove on Sydney's North Shore, Lower North Shore. The woman who started it runs it. She attends every council meeting. She covers, when I say hyperlocal, because usually local newspapers used to be a few suburbs, you know, or they'd be
an
LGA, a local government area.
Yeah.
But this is specifically Lane Cove, and she's been in business for several years. So that's hyperlocal. That's as hyperlocal as you get, literally one suburb, one postcode. And so I guess the point of that is she's not even a journalist. She's formerly a lawyer, and she started it and has a business model and it has filled a gap. And this one's in Sydney, let alone in the region. So, I mean, if you want to be part of the solution, if you care about stories, if you're wanting to get to, because we're just not getting those local, like those really local stories about corruption, about local, I don't know, things that are happening in local government, local elections. Those.
Yeah.
in so many parts across the country. We'll put a link in the show notes to Lena's starter kit for hyperlocal newsrooms for anybody who's interested.
That is very interesting.
Yeah.
I will just make a point about something that I heard said by someone who I can't remember, and I heard it on a podcast. And that sentence alone should be reason for me not to say the following.
Okay,
but
you
I
will. Yes.
Indeed, I will. I can't remember who it was, but it was a tech bro who was talking about like the sort of future structure of various industries. And he said, like, what you're going to have is you're going to have a big thing at the top, and then you're going to have like 1,000 little things. But what you won't have is the middle. So I'll give you an example. When he's talking about retail, he's like, you're going to have Amazon. That's massive. That's just the whale there at the top. And then you're going to have like 1,000, June's bespoke towels.
Yeah.
These very kind of like
Yeah.
much smaller, much more bespoke outfits at the bottom. What you're not going to have is like the middle, which is, things like, I don't know, like the Huffington Post or the,
Or BuzzFeed.
Or like Wondery, or even like the SMH,
The Guardian,
or just these
yeah.
kind of like middle kind of companies that make money but are in a little bit of strife, right? And that just, you're saying like even more and more local, hyper local, just made me think about that a little more, like as an example of like, oh wow, even more fragmentation, which like, I guess is good. I guess filling in news deserts is good. It's certainly required if the local papers can no longer kind of sustain their business model. Something else has to come in and fill that. But
What's going to happen to the middle guys?
Yeah, what's going to happen? What's going to, like, is this a trend? Like, how far forward with this trend are we going to move?
Yeah.
If we're already kind of like seeing it happen. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Was that enlightening?
That kind of turned my yes into a bit of
Yeah, it did. I don't do that.
Yeah. It's quite a skill, Jan. Congratulations.
Fucking hell. I got to get better. I will.
No, you're just you, and that's wonderful.
I am. Thank you. That's a nice compliment. And you are also
Not a shithead.
You know what? I think that's a perfect place to end on.
Yes, thank
Actually, you are not a shithead. Our listeners are not shitheads. Some people are shitheads, but
Not you.
not this,
guys.
not this
No.
orbit. No. Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of We Used to Be Journos. As always, your support, we value it so much because it really does make a difference. And I know that not everybody can support with their dollars, but everybody can support with a like and a share and a comment and a review and a 5-star review at that. Because that really does help boost visibility for our little show, and we would greatly appreciate it.
That's all from us. We will catch you next week.
Bye-bye.